Good morning, everyone. Today's session is about compliance frameworks and how it will look like in the future. Or are we actually expecting to see a more frequent update for the famous frameworks? My name is Gidi Farkash. I'm an husband, father for 3 amazing sons, and a dog owner, being in the industry for the last 22 years, currently in the role of the head of security at People, an identity trust company. Before that, I led the compliance practices at Anecdotes, being with Amdocs as a manager for the application security architects and the bid response team in the security group. Before that, a couple of other roles, including also the VP Professional Services at Dynasec, one of the famous and first GRC solutions in the market. And the company was acquired by Checkpoint in 2011. Besides that, I'm an enthusiast about security all in all, holding a couple of certifications, almost always learning for new certifications and new things that I always like learning, like jogging, reading, and some other activities. So without further ado, today's session is basically about frameworks. So I guess if you all know of ISO 27001, EPA, SOC, specifically SOC 2, PCI DSS, and all sorts of special publications coming from this, like the 800-53, 171, things about risk management, SDLC, vulnerability assessment, and on and on. And what I would like to focus today is not about those frameworks and what they actually contain. Instead, I would like to talk about the frequency of their update and whether it makes sense for us as experts, as professionals in the industry to get or to follow those frameworks as is, or maybe the frequency is not good enough for us. So I assume that you all know that ISO 27001 is really new. The new version, the 2022, just published during March. We are recording it upfront before the meeting. The session is supposed to be on April 4th. So I assume it's already out there because ISO 27002, the code of practice for the Annex A of ISO 27001, already been issued to the public at the end of February. So ISO 27001 version 2022 supposed to be released during March 2022. In addition, PCI is also something that's supposed to be issued. Version number 4 of it, supposed to be issued any moment. I mean, a couple of weeks, maybe again, it's already been issued after recording it, but before the session is actually running. NIST is also pretty frequently renewed every couple of years. ISO is usually 6 years old, though the last one that was the version of 2013 been issued a draft during 2019, but it took some time, and then Corona came, COVID came, and obviously it took some more time in this specific case, but in most cases, most of the frameworks are being updated within 5 to 6 years, some of them a bit more frequently, but we can all agree that it's way far from what we are expecting. For example, only now we are finally finalizing or completing the process of migrating all the frameworks from control-based, checklist-based to risk-based approach. I wouldn't say all of them because we still have SOC 2 and EPA that are not really risk-based. And we have ISO that is risk-based when you look at the ISMS, but Annex A is still a checklist-based or control-based, or control objectives-based to be precise. But we assume that those are also moving towards risk eventually. And that's basically what I would like to discuss today. So why does it even matter? What exactly are we expecting to happen? So for example, we know that SOC 2 become almost like de facto or the framework of today. If you want to sell in the US, you are being expected to have SOC 2 if you are a service or solution provider, because that's one of the first lines of I wouldn't call it defense, but first things that a prospect, a customer, is going to check before starting to work with a new vendor. Unless the vendor is really, really huge and famous, if it's a small cybersecurity company or something like this, probably the customers are expecting you to be SOC 2 compliant. And one of the weird things is SOC 2 being led by auditors from the accounting firms, Ernst & Young, Deloitte, PwC, KPMG, BDO, etc., because it's led by accounting firms that they are not expert in security. I'm not saying that all accountants lack security knowledge, though, I mean, I do know some that are amazing in security, but not all of them are security expert. And by definition, an accountant is not a security expert. The fact that the AICPA is the body that stands and publish the SOC 2, and they allow only certified public accountants that are members of the AICPA to actually perform the audit, means that security is something that is missing during those audits. And currently, those accountants are always preferring to use their own checklists or internal checklists, try to compare them with the control environment that you may have in your organization before or during the audit. And the main concept, the real concept that's supposed to be the right one, is transforming it, the SOC 2 basically, to risk approach. And once it will be risk-based approach, then the accountant, in this case, again, maybe a security expert that is also an official or certified public accountant, will be able to understand the risks and see whether you build the proper control environment or not in your organization. So here, they won't just perform the audits, they will also have some opinion about, whether you actually treat your security risks the right way or not. IPA is almost the same. We are, eager to see an update, not an amendment, but an actual update to the regulation, obviously because it's something that requires eventually the President of the United States to sign a bill. Obviously, that's something that takes time, but we are expecting for quite some time IPA to be updated, and again, to also transform into risk-based approach. Though I have to tell you that in IPA, you do need to do some kind of risk assessment and understand where your electronically protected African information is stored, and accordingly to secure those environments. Almost the same as the concept of CDE in PCI, if you are familiar. As for privacy, GDPR, CCPA, CPRA, LGPD, and lots of other PDPA and on, lots of other privacy regulations all over the globe. They all have their own DPIA, which obviously is in a way some kind of a risk-based approach or similar to risk. If you're not familiar with the term, DPIA is data protection assessment, impact assessment. It obviously looks for assessing the impact of leaking of that data, the privacy data. So in a way, we can say that that's the privacy relevant risk. And of course, frameworks, most of the frameworks, not all of them, of course, you have CIS, you have even in NIST and the CSA, obviously you do have lots of things about cloud, and ISO 27017 and 18 cover cloud and privacy on the cloud. But most of the frameworks lack knowledge or lack guidance towards cloud, which seemed to be, 10 years ago, it seemed to be legit because cloud was popular enough, but not really popular. It was still considered as something for development environments, things like this, not just production or not 100% production. Nowadays, most of the companies that were established in the last 10 years are cloud-based, purely cloud-based. So obviously, we do expect all those frameworks to issue something or to say something about cloud in the next future. And that's basically the question. Are we going to see more and more changes or more updates to frameworks because they need to move to risk-based approach, and cloud and next-gen technologies and emerging threats are coming on a day-to-day basis or are arising on a day-to-day basis? So that's basically the desired state. Yes, we would like to see more frequent updates to frameworks. For example, once a year update of ISO 27001 it shouldn't be a major update. It should be a minor update, something that adds a control here, reduces a control there. For example, in the last update, that again, may already be published and you may even seen it already, there are some new controls, and also they reduced or removed some of the controls, but obviously they didn't change or disrupt the entire framework. Most of it remains the same. Of course, they've added some categorization to controls. They added some, they've changed the way the controls are divided or sectioned into different chapters and high-level chapters about people and process and technology, things like this. By the way, if you have some questions or you are wondering about the changes, feel free to reach out and I will be happy to explain and elaborate much more about it. But those modifications, those changes, those updates are really, really vague, are really, really super late. I mean, we would like to see those things on much more frequent basis. For example, once a year, small, minor modifications that will help us or guide us through. In this way, by the way, we won't even need to reinvent or to redo everything once in a couple of years. Instead, we can always maintain and make them small modifications over time. The idea, again, behind having more frequent basis and even minor modifications issued to us on even a yearly basis is, again, responding to emerging threats, new technologies, and all sorts of phenomena that we see on a day-to-day. For example, during COVID, remote access, remote work, working from home, physical security in your own home, things like this. And of course, the remote access itself, more about maybe zero trust or other concepts. All those things could have been great if they've been issued in those frameworks, and sadly they didn't. And that's one of the, I think, one of the cons of compliance frameworks, though we do want them, we do understand that those help us to align with industry practices, those help us to ensure that we are aligned, etc., etc. So basically what I want you to take from this session is I would like to ask you to join the cause, to help other professionals using your own experience, your vast experience, in GRC, in product security, in SOC, Security Operations Center, or SOC analysts or managers, in incident response, business continuity, basically in each and every domain in the information and cybersecurity arena. I'm calling you to join the cause and help. You can join groups in IC Square, in ISACA, in CSI. You can join work groups. Suggest your ideas, offer the chapters, for example, the Israeli chapters, to talk about things, to publish things on their behalf, together with others, working with your peers to make it better. And of course, if you can, even outside of those organizations, if you can mentor your colleagues and peers, help via LinkedIn posts, discuss things, professional things in WhatsApp groups, even inspirational posts here and there, some thinking groups or working groups that you can join. And again, help us to update those frameworks much more frequently. So I am calling you to do this and to help us make it a bit more secure world. And of course, the whole idea behind compliance or compliance framework is to make it fun, to make it easy, not to make our life harder, but to make it smoother and much more simpler, achieve better ROI to our business, or sometimes we also like to refer to it as ROSI, return on security investment. Of course, focus on what really matters, okay? Handle or deal with security issues, not just with following checklists without good reason. That's, by the way, why we all shifted to risk-based approach. And of course, all in all, help the world be much more improved from security perspective. I'm always eager and open to know you, discuss things, and you can find me at gidi.farkash@gmail.com. Thank you very, very much.